Hello, this is Bobby Helicopters. We're going to go pay a visit to a good friend, Mel Farr, K6KBE, better known as King Baker Easy. He's a co-founder for KLM Antennas and Electronics. This is his house. Drove about a mile up a dirt road to this nice plateau in Ione, California. Well, let's go pay Mel a visit. Well, hello, Mel.
Hello, Bob.
Good to see you. So, Mel, why don't you tell us about your main operating position here?
This is my main operating position that operates from 160 to 450 megs, basically sideband and CW, some AM. I've got the normal cadre of equipment, if you will. The right-hand side is the station monitor. Above it, the 2-meter, 220, and 440 FM radio. 6-meter monitoring station with the 756 Pro. My Davis weather station on top. To the left is the remoted rotor for the 2-element stepper, the K3 and the controller for the stepper, and to the left of that is the switchable controller for all of the wire and VHF antennas I have. That's the double extended ZEPs for 160, the big inverted V for 80, the 2-element stepper for the other high bands. And to the left of that is my amplifier.
I see you have a lot of paper on your wall.
Well, I got both my wife's license for ham radio and mine, and then above that my commercial license. My son moved in next door and he's also a ham, so that's going to be fun.
Being here with Mel, I've learned of a lot of his history and a lot of his background that he's done over the years, and I think Mel needs to tell us all about that stuff. Here you go.
Okay, well, I started in hamming at the end of the 50s, and that was a hot spot as far as the sunspot cycle was concerned. We had a lot of fun on 6 meters and all the high HF bands. Along that time, I got my conditional and then my general license, and I had the opportunity in a machine shop to build my own microphone. Now, this has been with me for over 50 years at hamming, and this year I decided that instead of being just that patina brass, I'd chrome plate it. So this year I chrome plated it, and it takes a prestigious spot in the ham radio.
Well deserved.
I've been a ham all these years, and it has led me to all of my commercial work. In other words, if I hadn't had the ham license, I probably would not have been in communications as time went on. I've been in radio communications, either product development or designing or managing projects for all of those years, 50 years. I think the most notable one was in the late 60s. I had the opportunity to put a two-way television system on the top of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Of course, that's no longer here. That installation on top of the World Trade Center was a high point as far as my into high spots on amateur radio or commercial radio. I've also been involved with writing for some time. I was fortunate enough to be a co-author in Bill Orr's last antenna handbook, and I have written as co-authors in 2 of the microwave books that you see here, which are notable background for most project managers in the communications industry. The main thing that I see is that it has let me do a lot of things as I retired, like antenna modeling design, which I continue to do. I still do consulting work at a modest level at my age, of course, and I no longer climb my 180-foot tower. One of the interesting things about this QTH is the fact that the house is nowhere near the antennas, which creates a problem in control and signal strengths and all that. What I ended up having to do more than once was decide that I was going to remote all of the controls. That is, the stepper 2-element antenna had to be remoted. The switching of the antennas between HF arrays, the 160, 80, and 40, and the rotor control. The antennas are 850 feet away from my spot right here. So everything had to be controlled on Cat5 cables with microprocessors at each end. And with the advantage of the SDA 100 controller from Stepper, I was able to control all the functions of the Stepper antenna remotely right here. So I can just turn it on, and all of the functions of the antenna are right here. I can then switch this, which is a rotor control, and again, if you look at the dial, I can rotate the antenna from here, although we're 850 feet away. And I'm not providing any power through the Cat5 cables. All the power is local at the bottom of the towers. But all the control signals and all the feedback are right here. So that, in addition to the switch control box up here, which allows me to switch from a large one wavelength inverted V for 80 meters to quadrature 160 meter double extended ZEPs, 350 feet long, or between the tower and the Stepper. So I can switch all those remotely and not have to get up and do anything about it. So that makes enjoyment of the sideband activity at my retirement QTH a very nice thing. And so far, in 10 years, I've only had one failure, and that was when we had a lightning strike and it took out one of the controller boards. Other than that, flawless. Well, that about wraps up the sideband position up here with the modern equipment. How about we go downstairs and look at the AM position with the vintage equipment in the wine cellar. So now we're down in the wine cellar, where it's definitely cooler than the rest of the house, and where I keep my AM equipment. Here I have an HRO 50 Tango, which I use for AM receiving, primarily on 80 meters. The control console that I had features in an article in Electric Radio Magazine, an older TS50, my original SBE 33 that my wife bought for me when we got out of the service in 1964. And this radio here is a little unique. It's one of 35 that was manufactured by KLM. And it has heritage going back to the CIR Astro and the Stoner 1080 transceivers. No tuning knobs. This was done by toggle switches only. Here's my Bauer 707 that I restored, and it's basically on 80 meters AM. Didn't require an awful lot of restoration as far as cleaning it up is concerned. But of course, I'm not using crystal control. I'm using a DDS in my control console that's remoted into the Bauer to allow me to go anywhere on the 80 meter band that I want to go. This is the back of the Bauer, and it shows the areas where I had to modify it to operate on 80 meters. Basically, it's changing the output loading, which used to be a Pi-L, to a single Pi network, adding the control relay switches between transmit and receive, because on AM transmitters you didn't have receive, and the time sequencing for turning on the filaments and the high voltage, and a high voltage surge soft start down here. Everything else is pretty much stock. However, I did have to remote all of the meter readings. So on the control console, I have the grid current, screen current, plate current, modulation current, and oscillator drive. So that allows me to make sure while I'm transmitting that there's no changes in the operation of the transmitter. Inadvertently, let's say if I change frequency and don't repeak, that way I get the notification on the control panel and I can come and make the adjustments without any trouble. Other than that, it's been flawless. Now, you'll have to notice though, you see the silver tape? Well, there's a lot of holes in here after you take a lot of the equipment out. And if you don't patch the holes up, you don't get enough airflow going through the proper areas for cooling and operate the airflow switch. The first receiver I had after I got a job and could afford one was an NC183. Unfortunately, along the way I had to sell it, but I found another one that was equally in good a shape and restored it a little bit. It was in pretty darn good shape to begin with. And it's my AM broadcast receiver and standby AM receiver for AM on 75 or 80 meters. What I have here is my wine cellar. I have 3 batches of wine going through this summer. I have 12 liters of champagne grapes. I have 5 gallons of plum, and I have almost 8 liters of Petite Sirah. As you can see, they're at various levels of processing, because some of them are very clear, like the plum, getting clear on the champagne. And the first couple bottles have a lot of sediment from the yeast process that is settling down to the bottom. And it might be interesting. You can see the bottom silt, which is the dregs from the yeast dying off and falling to the bottom. One of the unique things about this QTH is it's on top of a big flat top mesa. They call it hidden mesa for a good reason. Down on the valley floor, you'd never know it was up here. When I started looking for property in 1985, I talked to the real estate agent, and he mentioned he had some, and so we came out to take a look. When we came off the top of the hill, I said, well, where is this 40-acre parcel? And he says, right out there on the point. And as you'll see when we go outside, I said at that time, I'll take it. Here we are on top of the highest point in my property. We're at about 700 feet elevation right here. To my right, scanning, is Martel Jackson, swinging on around. We go past Jackson Peak. We come around towards McCollum Hill. And on the far right is now Bear Mountain on the far side of Valley Springs. And we're continuing on around, and we're looking at the hill drop off on this side, and we see the barn and then my 180-foot tower. This flat top mesa is 350 feet off the valley floor. So in all directions from the antenna tower down on all the antennas, the land falls off at between 45 and a 60-degree angle to the valley floor, which means takeoff angle here is right on the horizon. As you come away from the house, all of the power and control cables are underground. This is the first distribution point where I switch coaxes between the stepper antenna and all the antennas on the tower. It also has all the junction cables for the control of the rotators and the stepper antenna. So in the need to do any troubleshooting, I've got an intermediate point to test. Here we are over at the end of the tower runs and coax and controls. In front of me here is my tubular tower, which is tilt over and crank up. It's now down at the 25-foot level. And up at the top, you can see my offset rotor to drive the stepper, and of course the ladder for servicing makes it really nice. Inside the control box here, I have the stepper remote control panel and my relays that switch the rotor direction for rotating the stepper antenna from up there. Works very well because all the power is supported right from here. To my far right is the 185-foot tower. On top of it is my 220 repeater. And coming off the top of that are the 2 double extended ZEPs. The one closest to me has the feed line going up, and the feed line attaches to the antenna at about the 150-foot level. The other one, which is out of sight, is the one that goes north and south. This is the east-west one. The inverted V is fed off the top, where the apex of the inverted V is at 120 feet. I also use the guy wires because they're insulated on the tower for 60 meters. This is the switch yard for the ladder lines, and as you can see, they're on tall insulators. They come into open frame relays, balance, and then into the coax that goes back 850 feet to the house. Top of the 180-foot tower, you'll see a gray-blue vertical, and that's my 220 repeater. It's grounded, but you can also see a little spike off the top of the tower to the left, which is also ground for lightning. Coming down off of that, right at the top of the lattice tower section to the right, you'll see a piece of rope and an insulator, and that's one of the what I would call the east-west double extended ZEP antennas. Coming down a little further at the second set of cross arms, you'll see a single pulley that goes out and laterally to another pulley, and that's the top at 120 feet of the full wavelength inverted V. Coming down on the wire, you'll see where the 6-to-1 balun is.
Mel, I just can't believe this antenna system you've designed up here and everything. One question, when was the last time you were at the top of that tower?
2 years ago. I'm 74 years old now.
74, you're doing all right, buddy.
This is my GMC pickup where I use HF, UHF, VHF, and on the inside you can see my HLA 300 Plus amplifier linear for HF, 350 watts output driven by a little FT 817. And on the back of the truck is my HiQ 50-160 motorized screwdriver antenna where the coil does not move. The tap on the coil is on the inside, so there's very little vibration and no problems with it. And because we have a lot of power outages up here on the Mesa, I have a 35,000 watt diesel generator that is on standby, tests every month, that will run the whole house, pumps, water, everything.
Well, Mel, you have a fantastic place here, fantastic operating positions, a lot of history. We really enjoyed our time here, and thanks a lot. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Bob and California Hammond.